Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sonic Talk episode 613. We've got this kind of mixed metaphors going on here because it's the 1st of April and it's also the 613th episode. I don't know if there's anything, going on there. If it was a Friday the 13th and the 1st of April, no, that couldn't possibly happen anyway. What am I talking about? I'm absolutely gibbering. This is what's happened. I've only spent like a week in confinement and I'm fortunate enough to be able to get to work because I work here alone. And I'm already losing my marbles. So we hope that we can help you not lose your marbles while we talk about the things that Sonic Talk are about. Sonic Talk is about music production, music technology, and now perhaps working from home studios, music, all of the things sort of surrounding the making, recording, and distributing and mastering, all those kind of things in music. I want to say thank you very much to iZotope. They're providing a prize of Ozone 9 Advanced yet again. I mean, they probably, by the time we get through this, they'll have given one to every single person who listens to the show. So we thank them very, very much for that. So stay tuned. That's become about halfway through. And the rest of the time, we'll just be talking. This is a kind of more of a sort of free-form vibe because there's no news, frankly, so because everybody's staying in. But we've got lots of stuff that we can talk about, and we've got some great guests. We'll start over here with Mr. Jamie Liddell, who's there in Nashville, Tennessee. I feel like doing a duck walk again, ding, 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 doing a bit of Chuck Berry action after I say that. But how are you, Jamie?
I guess I'm the oddball, like the English bloke with loads of synths in Nashville. But, hey, I'm quarantined in this kind of library cave. Things could be a lot worse. A lot worse,
yeah. And also, I'm assuming that it's sunny and you get sun when you get daylight. That's good.
Yeah. There's daylight. There's a lot of positivity. I was speaking to Fab Dupont. That character, lovely guy, and man, just telling me about grocery shopping in New York. Sounded intense. But anyway, I'm not going to get involved with that. Everything is tickety-boo. It's good to be back.
Excellent. Well, lovely to have you. Lovely to have you. As ever, it's always a pleasure. And I know you've been very busy, so we got something to talk about, actually. You've got a bit of a release, a bit of a freebie going out, so we'll talk about that a little bit later on.
Great.
And also we have Mr. I'm going to go to Dave because Ty's eating a banana. And I don't think he'd want me to do that. Here we go. The evil banana king. Let's not go there. Did you set that up for me, Tom? Mr. Dave Spears, GeForce Software, who, again, like many of us, is used to working alone. So this is sort of it's just more of the same in many ways, although lots of things have changed, clearly. But you're there in your home studio there. Lovely to have you, Dave Spears. GeForce Software. Is it a special day for GeForce Software today, by any chance?
It is. It's very, very strange. I sort of hesitate to mention it, but I did speak to a friend and he said, life goes on. It's not going to happen again, so you should celebrate it. We're 20 years old today, which is kind of appropriate that we started on April the 1st in a lot of ways. So, yes, I did a big Slack thing to all of our remote workers this morning, which was tear-inducing in a way, because actually we've worked with the same people for so long. In fact, our graphics guy's been with us right from the beginning, and I think our most recent addition is at least 7 years ago. So, yeah, I just threw him a load of photographs from our dodgy past and explained how we got to where we've got today. So, yes, thank you. And cheers. So cheers. I'm celebrating. By the end of this podcast...
Is that a glass? Well, that looked a little bit like a bottle that you might... Oh, no, it's a glass, yeah. I thought it looked like one of those things you might use in bed when you couldn't get up to do your business. But
well, it doubles up as that as well. It may have to do today. But, no, I thought...
happy birthday, Dave.
Thank you.
I mean, it's good to... there's a dearth of April Fool's stuff today, but as you can imagine, why not? I mean, it's not the time for joking necessarily. Brevity's okay, but I think people haven't really had their minds on it, so we haven't got any of that going on. But we have got Mr. Ty Unwin. I don't know what that link was for. That was terrible of me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean you to be the butt of a joke there, Ty. Ty Unwin, composer.
Can I point out this morning whose daughter decided that she was going to play a prank and tell me that she was ill. Oh. And then when I went to see her when I went to see her in bed, she then decided that she was going to pull her head from the sheets with pink blotches that she'd put all over her face. Of course, she found that hilarious. And all I'm thinking is, yeah, well, we know what I'm thinking. So great. Yeah, so happy fall. Yay!
Oh, bless them. Bless them. The innocence, the ignorance of youth. In a way, that's great, though, isn't it? In many ways, making light. Well, I mean, happy April Fools then, Ty. And actually, the other thing, I mean, the other thing I was going to say, Dave, is you were also the first guest on the first Sonic Talk. So,
oh wow, yes.
So we've got a number of. I mean, we're not celebrating a particular milestone, but 613. I suppose we're celebrating 613 hours of content, perhaps.
Wow.
If that's
can I just put something in context about GeForce, the software? And I'm not doing this just because Dave's on here. I'm absolutely not. But so my, I'm just for the sake of it at the moment. I'll tell you more when we talk about the whole, kind of isolation thing or whatever. But I'm doing a lot of work on my travel rig, just because. And so in my template, and bearing in mind, I'm really fortunate. I've got kind of all the soft synths of every kind of variety known to man, which is an illness. But just so you know, in my template, and I've cut my template down to a really, really small template, which is not like me. And I've got about 20 tracks in there, of which there's the Oddity, there's the Imposca, and there's the M-Tron Pro. Wow. And now, bearing in mind, Dave knows this. Dave's knows what soft synths I've got. I've got them all, and those three have made it through to my top 20 template.
Okay.
The elimination round.
That's pretty good.
So that's, but some of these designs as well are old now, but they still absolutely stand up to all the newbies. Really do. They're great bits of software. So hats off to you, Dave.
Excellent.
Thank you, Ty.
Isn't that lovely? Isn't that lovely? Right, well, a bit of housekeeping out of the way first. And you may or may not have seen this, but Superbooth have now announced that they're doing the Superbooth 20 Home Edition, which is a great, very amusing title. And we are actually official media partners. So our kind of Q Sonic event, we're not sure whether we're going to continue with that brand or not, but we're still aiming to do a whole bunch of content around Superbooth. We've we've contacted loads and loads of people, and we're waiting for people to come in, manufacturers who might have been showing. If there's anybody out there who wants to be part of our video coverage, we'll be able to do sort of remote product stuff. We've done some testing with all sorts of things. Then please do get in touch. The address is sonicshows@sonicstate.com. But we will be producing a whole bunch of content around those dates at Superbooth, which is they're going first on the 23rd of April. We're going to go on the 24th to the 26th. So if you want to do any product videos or just have a chat, I mean, it really, if your product's not ready and you want to talk about an old one, that's okay too, because we just want to get as much stuff in that we can do around the Superbooth. So they're calling it, like I say, Superbooth 20 Home Edition. I've also wanted to plug, we've actually got a document, which I've got it here, which is basically a kind of how to get in touch with us via video conferencing so that we can shoot product videos or, screencasts or all that sort of stuff. There's sort of diagrams on how it works and how you might want to connect things up. And that you can find at bit.ly/remotevid. So it's a bit.ly URL and it's just remote vid. We're making that public just because it might help people who, maybe not want to get in touch with, involved in this event, but it might help them stream to other people or whatever it is that they need to do. So there's a bunch of advice and kind of maybe some useful information there that might help you out. So I wanted to put that out there. But remember, that's going to be the dates are going to be roughly the same as Superbooth, assuming we get enough people, because what we're trying to do is get people to shoot stuff with us now so that it's not all happening in the last 3 days before the event, because we want to shoot it in advance and edit it up and upload it to YouTube. It's not a live stream thing. And it's not going to cost anything, I should also point out as well. So, I wanted to get that out there because we need some more people to come in and go, yes, let's film something on my this, that, and the other. So let's go for it. Okay, right. All of that nonsense out the way. Let me find my my page of notes. One more thing. Paul Talbot sent us some tea bags. I was talking about tea bags a couple of weeks ago, and he sent a nice box of Yorkshire Gold tea bags as a gift. So thanks, Paul. I did quarantine them for 72 hours before I opened the package, and they're now in the kitchen ready to be drunk at leisure. But thank you very much for that. It's very kind. So if I come to you for a second, Jamie, you've actually just put out a vid, haven't you, or a product? Now I'm trying to find the URL because let me see if I can. It's not that one. It's not that one. It's this one. This is something that Jamie's been working on with Heimbach. Isolation loops, very topically. So these are a bunch of, I guess, textures and sounds and loops that you've created in your lovely library of sound. Oh, this looks good. Oh, nice. And your lovely collection of instruments.
Yeah, you know.
Oh, nice. I thoroughly recommend that you watch the whole video. Some lovely sounds in there. So tell us a little bit about that, Jamie. You can give it a plug.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. Because it's really a companion pack to the work of Heimbach, who, I mean, if there are any people out there watching that are not aware of Heimbach out in the internet universe, he's fantastic. Such an inspiring character. He does these beautifully put together videos, and he's on Patreon. You can grab his sounds. He's currently really investing his energy into sort of test equipment, the really beyond modular kind of extreme sonic, mission of trying to make sounds out of nuclear test equipment and so forth. But he creates all manner of bizarre and really beautiful sounds. And he put together the original Isolation Loops pack on Bandcamp. And I never had a Bandcamp before, and I just thought, what a cool thing. It's basically a free pack. I've made this companion pack's also free, and I started a Bandcamp page just to put it up there. And so you can find this Isolation Loops. That's the original one, exactly.
Yeah. How timely? Because when was that posted? Because that may have been posted April the 20. I don't know when it was posted, but previous to all of this business.
Pretty recently.
Okay.
Pretty recently, yeah. So, and then, right. Now, it was after all of this craziness started. And then, I just followed it up a couple of weeks later. And I mean, it's really, it's a pack of sounds that really kind of covers this studio. The wobbly bits, lots of tape and various multiple tape processes, loads of modular stuff. As you saw there, some kind of processed acoustic instruments.
Here we go.
All
I got it
manner
here.
of stuff. Thanks so much, Nick. I appreciate that. And it's been lovely just to see everyone kind of write about it. And I've been really enjoying Bandcamp as well. I just loved what they did recently. Yeah, and I can't believe I've never been on there before. So just a lot of positive things around that, and just everyone getting back about it. And it's been good for me to really occupy myself trying to make something.
I was going to ask about that.
I
was kind of going to ask about that. I mean, have you found that having a project that you can kind of get your teeth into helps? Because I mean, one of the things, and I want to talk about this. I mean, just your mental state is kind of hard to manage in this situation because it's all such uncharted territory. And for a lot of people who perhaps are out a lot, this is a very different thing. Perhaps many of us in our world stay in a lot because of the nature of our work. But one thing I've found really, really helpful to drop the anxiety levels is just don't watch the news. Don't engage with the endless news cycle. I mean, you need to know what you need to know, but don't obsess on it, because all it does is keep this low level anxiety, and it's really hard to jump out of that. And I would recommend, watch it once a day whenever it works. If they're about to start something radical in your area, you'll know about it. You don't need to be on the TV or on Facebook all the time. And I would say it's really good for your mental sort of well-being, because you can forget a little bit. But I mean, coming back to what you were saying, Jamie, the idea of having a project, I mean, that must have been, did you sort of throw yourself into it and absorb yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I really did. And I just thought of what would be useful. Heimbach set up a really good example by the kind of range of sounds that he provided, some sort of soundtrack-esque stuff and some kind of noisier bits. And I tried to sort of, in a way, stay on that page, which gave me a kind of cool starting point. Even like recorded my voice on a chromatic scale that goes up a few octaves. And so you can build your own little Jamie Mellotron, and you know, there's just I got into it, yeah. So you know, it is a product of sorts, but you know, it's totally free if you want it. And just thought I just want to, you know, have a little bit of an opportunity, yeah, to get stuck into something, and also just sort of give people out there some tools to not lose their marbles if possible.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. Yeah, I mean, and I think that's really, really helpful as well. Dave, that's not Dave, that's Dave there. Dave, so what have you been doing to occupy your time? I mean, presumably you're still working, because I mean, a lot of your work is kind of isolated and remote, and you've got products in development, no doubt, and things you have to do. So have you been able to just keep things going for pretty much?
Yeah, completely. I mean, it's very interesting from our perspective, because all of our team work remotely, and then we kind of do these 2-3 week scrums where everyone works, and then they present their work to everybody else, and then everybody else picks it apart, and then we start from scratch again. No, we kind of carry on and make amendments wherever necessary. But it is really important to kind of try and keep the team together, because everybody within their team is dealing with other, you know, family issues and stuff like that, concerns. So yeah, it's been, in fact, I've noticed that my output has probably decreased, because now what's happened is there are other people who are normally at work who are now at home who think, tell you what I'll do, I'll just message Dave or I'll email Dave. And in fact, I said to Chris the other day, it took me from, I'm always in the chair at about 9:15 in the morning. It took me from 9:15 to 1 o'clock to kind of talk to other people in the world, and finally get down to some work at about 1 o'clock. So yeah, my output has definitely gone down. And like you say, there is this kind of degree of anxiety, but it's really fascinating, because when we first started, people, particularly engineers and programmers, and I regard kind of artists in the same category, that when you present them a project and you kind of go, could we do this? And how long do you think it would take? They come up with this kind of magic figure estimate, which is always 3 months. It's become a bit of an in-house joke over the years. And we know that from experience that 3 months is actually a year to probably 18 months, because you cannot work at that sustained level. And also with a lot of engineers, and in the same way of a lot of artists, if they've got an idea and something they want to try, there are no books that they can read, or, you know, certainly textbooks they can refer to, but there are no books they can read to tell them how to do these things. A lot of it's trial and error. And the real trick is knowing when to stop, because actually if you try and sustain the output that you think you can for any prolonged period of time, that's when it leads to burnout. And we learned that quite early on, which is probably why our output isn't huge. But actually, it's really important to us to make sure that we kind of take care of the people that are working with us, and we don't subject them to stupid deadlines and stuff like that. So it's like, if you need to step away from this, and actually, I think with a lot of people who are self-employed or work from home, the hardest thing, once you've got into that discipline of, I need to be in here and keep regular hours and work, which for me was a very easy thing to do. But I know for others, it's not that easy. That once you've got into that routine, the hardest thing to do is to know when to stop, because there's always something that needs doing. And sometimes you do have to kind of go, now I'm going to go and talk to my family, or now I'm going to go and do something creative, as opposed to, you know, work. So yeah, all of those things kind of dovetail into this. And that's the only advice that I've given people who have found themselves, you know, having to work from home and are really struggling with the transition, is try and discipline yourself into a routine, but also know when to stop. So yeah.
Excellent. Ty, it's hilarious. I'm watching your wry smile as this, because I mean, as we all know, Ty, in being a media composer and being very much in demand, you're always working to deadlines. You know, I mean, the workload, as we know, can be really oppressive and really, I mean, you're very, you know, you're very skilled at being able to do it, but, you know, presumably now you've got a little bit more breathing space. I mean, or are people trying to get stuff finished, or how's that working out for you?
No, if you remember, look, when I was a kid, my teachers always used to say, he's so lucky that if you pushed him out of an aeroplane, he'd be the one that found the hay bale. He'd be the one that was absolutely fine. Since I was a kid, I've just been incredibly fortunate and incredibly lucky. And if you remember at the end of last year, exactly what Dave was talking about in terms of burning out, I just got to stage having done it. I mean, I've practiced self-isolation for the last 25 years. I'm ready for this, and so, but it got to the end of last year and I just thought, you know what, I need some time out. And so I stepped away from the media stuff. I just cleared the books. I just cancelled everything and I just literally stepped away. And yet again, ironically, as my teachers would have said, lucky git again, because I've got all of my friends and colleagues who productions are shutting down. Some of them are carrying on, obviously, because they have to, but a lot of work is shutting down. And most of my musician friends have gone from really good earnings to literally zero overnight. Whereas I I just basically took some time out from the end of last year. So I've been concentrating on doing midget stuff at my own leisure. And so in terms of work, I'm really so lucky this hasn't affected me at all. But yeah, if I was still working, the pressure would be huge at the moment, kind of just because, everything's getting a knocking. And yeah. Talking about the mental thing, I mean, again, incredibly lucky, incredibly fortunate. Look, we're in the music business and we're in the, we're creatives, we're artists, and I think we're all surrounded by people who don't have mental. Well, no, I've got lots of friends that do have mental issues, are not well generally because they're creative. That's a lot of the time. That's the nature of the beast. It comes part and parcel, and they're really struggling at the moment because it's getting a reality check on everything and not catastrophizing and not, panicking. And it's really difficult. It's really difficult. And they're doing exactly what you said. They're kind of taking on projects. They're making up their own projects. They're just getting their heads down. I've been incredibly lucky. I'm very black and white in my world. My problem is that sometimes I don't have gray. And so it's literally that or that for me all the time. And so for me, I'm quite realistic about the whole thing, and just it's going to affect us all in different ways, and it's going to affect us all personally on some level. But it's going to be what's going to be, and we can only use common sense, and we can be sensible, and we can do what we can do, and that's all we can do. We can't do any more than that. So my head is completely fine. I mean, the only difference is with me is that because everyone else is going into this kind of isolating mode, and genuinely I've done it for how many years, it almost feels like I need to kind of get in line with them to kind of empathize with what they're going through. So my normal regime of just coming down here and just head down, working, as Dave said, just working, and then walking away 18, 20 hours later, I've stopped that. Just because I kind of want to get in line with everyone else. So I'm ripping the studio apart.
Got different projects, I guess,
different projects, but just trying to get my head into a different space. I mean, you'll laugh at the timescale of my world, which is obviously bizarre because I spend so long in here. I thought, do you know what? I'm going to assemble a keyboard stand a Jasper Multi-Jasper keyboard stand that I bought a few months ago. So I went into the other studio, clambered through everything, found it, got it out, started to assemble it, took forever. And then I looked at the packaging note, and my few months were I'd actually bought it in 2015.
Right.
And in my head, literally, I'd bought it a few months ago. It was 2015.
Right.
That's how my head works timescale wise. So, anyway. But it's fine. Everything's fine for me. Work's good. I'm doing midget stuff, and other than that, what I'm trying to do is take a synth every day. My project is I take a synth every day that I don't normally get time to really explore, because I've said before how it's all right having all these synths, but there was a day when I had a few synths and knew them all like the back of my hand, and I hate the fact that right at this moment I have huge amounts of synths and know 10% of all of them, and I hate it. So what I'm actually using it for my project is every day I literally just take a random synth somewhere and I take it up to the house, hook it up to my travel rig, and spend 8, 10, 12 hours, a couple of days with some of them, just learning that synth in depth. And that's been amazing.
That's interesting. I mean, that's one of the things that we were talking about last week, wasn't it? The idea of the opportunity, if you do have time and you can get in the right headspace, to explore things that you didn't, like a new DAW or a synth or a synth that you just find it really difficult to work with or whatever.
Absolutely.
I think what we'll do is I'll just going to throw the iZotope competition in, and then we can get onto some of the sort of looser topic-based stuff that we have. But thanks ever so much for everybody's point of view. I mean, I think the important thing is we are lucky and privileged that where we are, it's not too desperate at the moment. I mean, for lots of people, it's really tough, and we kind of get that. I mean, we can only talk to our own experience, and we're trying not to sort of dwell on how crap it is for everybody, but trying to find the positive. So if anybody's going, but you don't know what's going on at X, Y places, that's why we're taking this approach. Well, that's why I'm steering in that approach. So let's have a little word from our friends over at iZotope.
Building on a 17-year legacy in audio mastering, Ozone 9 brings balance to your mix with never-before-seen processing for low-end, real-time instrument separation, and lightning-fast workflows powered by machine learning. Expect lower CPU usage and shorter startup times with Ozone 9 compared to Ozone 8. Experience fluid metering in a fully resizable environment that lets you track the most subtle details of your audio. Use more plugins at once, mix while you master without worrying about slowdowns or dropouts. And immerse yourself in a smooth, modern experience designed to keep you in your creative flow. As you can see, Ozone 9 is the fastest way to get your master off the ground. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out our other videos and head to iZotope.com to learn more about mixing and mastering and to download your free trial of Ozone 9.
And there we have it. And I want to say thank you very much to iZotope. We have a prize. You can win a copy of Ozone 9 Advanced. And the competition this week, looking for the hashtag. It's a Twitter competition. You just need to tweet essentially this bit to Twitter, which is 2 hashtags and 2 @. So the hashtag is your best mix. And the other hashtag is Ozone 9. To @SonicState and @iZotope Inc. So hashtag your best mix, that's one word, hashtag Ozone 9 to @SonicState and @iZotope Inc. And actually it's kind of a useful product because obviously people may be spending a bit of time finishing things, and this can help you finish that and get the mix kind of sounding pretty peachy as well. So do check it out. We also have a winner for last week, and this is great. It's got it's got an image for it as well. This is look, this is a sort of isolation gag. SpongeBob SquarePants in his pineapple. I'm going to head straight out. Oh yeah, I can't. Hope this is Elevated Heads at Elevated Heads. Hope everyone's enjoying the quarantine-induced studio time. Stay safe and finish some tunes, which is a good sentiment. So if you want to get in touch, Elevated Heads, I don't know what your real name is. Maybe that is your real name. Maybe you did it by deed poll. We can get iZotope to hook you up with Ozone 9 Advanced. So thank you very much for their sponsorship of the competition slot. Excuse me. So as we kind of, the news is a bit slim, I'm looking for these sort of evergreen topics, and my current crop of evergreen topics were, there's a sort of scenario about, we're all, well, perhaps you three guys are perhaps people who will buy equipment. I tend to have stuff that comes in because it's part of the job that I do, and I don't often buy equipment. But I was sort of thinking, what are your criteria for making a new musical equipment purchase? Is it purely feature? Is it purely function? Is it something that you need for a specific job? Or are there some more irrational requirements, I think was what I used, which I think, as we all know, gear acquisition, I mean, Jamie, just looking behind you, you've got so much room behind you for more stuff. I mean, all those shelves are empty.
You're right.
And what is it that what's your criteria? What is it? Is it something that you feel will kickstart a creative process, or what is it that, that piques your interest? Do you think I must have this?
Oh man. Yeah, I suppose my most recent rabbit hole was trying to get sort of an analog 2-bus thing again, having sort of ditched that idea and been working in the box primarily. I suddenly thought, I've got so much outboard, I should just try to do the 2-bus thing again. So I did sort of go down a bit of a rabbit hole with that one. That's usually how it works with me. I'm like, I sort of get some obsession in my head and go, wow, how would you do that though? And then I think, well, this is crazy to think about this. But my new thing is I sell equipment through a guy here who has a store called Retro Gear Shop in Nashville, and his equipment, the stuff he sells there is amazing. Like, it's crazy. Like, he's sold stuff to, you know, Aphex and Depeche Mode, and like, he has obscene stuff, very, very rare, weird stuff, you know, EMS vocoders and, you know, kind of like the crazier gates, limiters, you know, the level devil and weird shit. And so basically I've been trying to sell a piece with him. And then once I've sold it and I've got some money in the deposit, as it were, I use that money to get stuff. I'm trying not to get massively decadent purchases that would like eat into the account. So, I mean, that's one thing, a practical thing. But yeah, so I got on this 2-bus thing, and I thought, okay, I want to get the limiter. Then I want, you know, another VCA style compressor. Then I'm going to need an EQ. Then I need a way to go in and out of the whole system that I can really rely on. So all of that kind of led me down many rabbit holes. So that was a very focused goal. So I ended up with this Magic Death Eye limiter and the API 5500 and, you know, the Obsidian SSL style compressor, and then the Cranesong Head Quantum to kind of go in and out. So I've got like their Head Quantum as a kind of and then I'll use it as one plugin. So I'll just basically go in and out of the Head Quantum, and it'll just be one round trip, but it will go through the SSL, then actually a TubeTech multiband, then into the Magic Death Eye limiter, then into the API, then back into the head. So it's actually all analog for that whole loop, rather than everything being inserted and going back DA, AD, and all that. So there you go. There's an example of my crazy mind. And you know what? It sounds really good.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think that... I think that's an absolutely, yeah, exactly. But if it gets you a sound, because I mean, thing is, you know, we talked to you, Jamie, because we did that thing where we sort of slightly deconstructed the thing you did, like a Rose, was it like a Rose? No, with UA, yeah. and that had a very specific. Not only was the plate, the chamber sounding great, but the record path was clearly sort of quite special as well. So that makes a difference. You can hear that sound. It has an authenticity. Sometimes
it really does. It's funny. I mean, you know, I'll work with all this analog stuff, and I'll just be like, okay, it sounds great, and then I'll compare it to something else, and I'll just be like, am I just fooling myself? And then but then, you know, the experience of working with it is something that I like right now. And, you know, I've gone through all of this. Is it just nostalgia? And I'm like, there's a value in nostalgia.
There's an aesthetic to it. Is that, do you think
there's a value to it? There's a genuine life improving thing for me.
Right.
Not for everyone. Everyone can say that does it functionally. This does the same thing. Fine. You know, but you know, I like cutlery, you know. You can get the job done with just any old piece of metal, but I like to hold a certain piece of cutlery in my hand, and that's just the kind of arsehole that I am. And like the same thing applies to everything in life, doesn't it? I mean, it's just there's form and function debates all over the place, and it's really personal. And,
I agree. That's absolutely true. No, that's a really interesting perspective. I know, Ty, I don't know what I'm not quite sure what your criteria are, because I mean, it seems to me you get a period of time when maybe you're not working and you kind of think, you know, you're a collector. You've got a lot of really great keyboards, and you are buying. You're fortunate that your occupation allows you to do that, and it's tax deductible and all those things. But what is it that piques your interest? Do you just think I'll get that because I can, or is there something that you think I must have that? Where can I get it? You know, what is it?
It's a combination. It's a combination of all of it, really. I mean, just honestly, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with myself. In terms of, because when people say that I'm a collector, I hate the word collector. I spent decades hating people who collect synths, because the implication is you collect them and you don't use them. And so I had I've always had a problem with synth collectors. I've always wanted to think that I'm just someone who buys lots of synths because I use them, although the hate bit comes into, because there was a time when you could look around my studio and I would be able to say, okay, that is my bass machine, that is my string machine, that is my Atmos machine, that is my lead machine, and everything. And I would be able to justify the existence of every single bit of gear in the studio. It was a very personal thing, but they were my, even if it only did one thing well, that's what I wanted. I wanted something that did one thing better than everything else, and I could justify everything. Recently, you know, the last few years, that's completely gone out the window, and I have so much duplication. And I walk in here sometimes and just go, oh my God, you've turned into a collector. And for me, that's like the pits. And I just, so now when I talk, going back to the original question, when I look at a piece of gear, yes, there's a part of me that I'm incredibly fortunate because it's work. You know, I'll just buy it because I want it. There's a real genuine, something looks good, and I'll have it because I want it. But it has to do something now. I have to really consciously think it has to do something that I don't already have. And there's a lot of, I didn't buy a lot of gear last year. I think we had this conversation last year. I didn't actually buy that much new gear because there was just nothing that came out that I didn't already have. And it didn't really seem to offer anything new or better or whatever. And so I just didn't buy a lot. Whereas in the first few months of this year, there's stuff come along that has really, you know, it's like a mindset thing of going back into buying mode. And some stuff's come out that's really, I'm actually thinking, no, this does bring something new to the party. What I really wish is, I really wish I could do what Jamie does and actually go back to how I used to be. And like we all used to have to be, where, you know, for me to be able to afford a piece of gear or whatever, I'd sell an old piece of gear. And those, I used to hate it at the time. But again, talking about nostalgia, I genuinely have a nostalgic view of that kind of yearning and you knowing that the only way you can get that piece of gear is to sell something else and sacrifice that. Whereas all I seem to do at the moment is just, you know, just piles.
So what's the last thing that you got that surpassed your expectation, that you just kind of, you got it because I'm interested in that, but then you went, oh, actually, this is even better than I initially thought it was going to be?
Well, the few things that have recently, the Hydrasynth is fantastic. The Hydrasynth is really, really brilliant, and that surpassed what I thought it was going to be like. And the same with the Matriarch. The last thing, I've got so many Moog synths. The last thing I need is another Moog. You know, I'm all Mooged out completely, and so the Matriarch I'd literally just put to one side, and then I had to play on one, and there's something incredibly special and un-Moog-like about it, really, that I really like the Matriarch. They're the last two things that have really, really made me sit up and take notice. But, you know, I'm trying to, everything I had now, I really want it to do something different. I've ordered a Nonlinear Labs C15, only the fact that it's going to do something different. It's going to bring something
sensitive. Because I did a video test with Stefan Smith this morning, and he said, "Oh, Ty just ordered a C15." I was like, "Oh, okay," because they sound. I mean, that, you know, lots of people were like, and because I remember when we first talked about it, Ty, because he actually said, I'm really surprised because of what you said about it when we first showed it, because it was like a one-op FM thing, and everybody was like, what the hell's that for? There's no MIDI or anything. But the resolution and the, you know, I can understand why when you experienced it, you went, bloody hell, that really is actually something quite special.
It was more to do with the fact that all the things that people are finding not to criticize about it, to find fault with, in terms of, you know, there's no MIDI, there's no interfacing, there's no all that kind of thing. There was just something that just clicked in my head, which basically just went, so what you're basically saying is it's like a piano or it's like a guitar. And I think it was getting your headset around this fact that it's not just a synth that sits there and it's actually a proper real musical instrument. It just happens to have a lot of electronics inside it. And it was that thing, the same thing with the Schmidt. Let's be honest about this. I mean, when the Schmidt first came out, we all sat there listening to demos of the Schmidt, just going, really? Why are you going to spend that kind of money on that kind of instrument? It doesn't sound special. And what it took with the Schmidt, I don't know if you remember, but they gave it to some guy in wherever it was, somewhere in the East, where he basically spent some months programming patches for it. And all of a sudden there was this, oh my God, that's what it can sound like. And it was the same with the C15, the initial things that we saw of it. You're thinking, well, it's not that special, but people have spent time and effort and energy, and they've come up with some incredibly expressive stuff for it. And suddenly
it was a bit like a highly expressive DX7 jazz guitar patch to begin with, wasn't it? That was
exactly. You've hit the nail on the head. That's it. That's exactly what came. Except there was always one kind of orchestral string patch that always sounded awesome, and every time I came back to it, there was the kind of not very good DX guitar patch and this amazing string patch. But what's now surrounded this is a whole level of. So it's just it's going to make some really incredibly expressive sounds, and so what I'm saying is that is something new to the party. I've come off the retro stuff. I've kind of taken my foot off that because that's just
kind of done, isn't it?
That's just a rabbit. It's a rabbit hole that, you know, what I'm suddenly starting to realize is the reason I jumped off the first time round, because we're old enough to be able to have been there the first time round, was the fact that I would switch on the studio back in whenever it was early 90s, something like that, and you never quite knew which bits of gear would be working and which bits wouldn't be working. And when you're doing media stuff, and I mean, the one that I really remember, I was working on a project where, and I can't remember what the synth was now, but it was an old analog synth, and it was the main signature patch. It was the main signature sound of the entire series. And I switched it on one morning, and that was it. It was gone. And I had a deadline like the next day or something, and wow. that sound had just gone completely. And it's at that point I just thought, okay, I'm not having this. And I went completely digital and then in the box. And so all the analog stuff got sold off, and that's fine. And now I'm kind of at the stage now where, you know, there's bits of, I still don't know, there's bits of gear when I switch it on, you know, and you have your fingers crossed going, please boot up, you know, please switch on, please don't have a fault. And I'm suddenly thinking, if I now go down that rabbit hole where, as Dave will absolutely verify, I mean, the kind of money we're talking about on the high-end gear, you're talking about throwing a lot of money about gear that you don't really know whether it's going to work next Tuesday. And so I'm jumping off that. That's why what I do is, if I'm buying kind of more retro stuff, I buy the modern versions of, like the System 55, like the Model D. Yeah. And, you know, Schmidt, which is essentially an 8-voice poly, just, you know, nicely. The only thing, as I said, that will never go is the CS is the only one that will stay and will go nowhere ever.
Interesting.
But, you know.
Oops, I seem to be getting a phone call, but anyway. That's not something that... So, Dave, over to you. What is it, the criteria? I mean, you have different criteria because you require things for research for instruments, and you also, you know, you there is a sort of completist nature to the cabin where you've got all of those synths as well. So I'm just kind of curious as to, you know, there's probably two threads of why you would buy something. There's kind of, we need one of these, or I would really like one of these. There's a difference, right?
Yeah. The we need category falls into essential purchases. The I want falls into, please, Chris, can I have one of those? Because I want. And that's usually met with either indifference or a positive no. Although Chris is amazing on it, usually. I've stopped buying. In fact, I've stopped buying for a couple of reasons. Right at this moment in time, I feel it's really important for me to put my money where my mouth is in terms of supporting artists. So on things like that Bandcamp day, I spent an inordinate amount of money buying people's tracks, that some of which I'll probably never listen to, but it felt really important to put something back. The other reason I've temporarily stopped buying things is that I can't remember what the scenario was, but I'd been into the big studio a couple of times and I'd thought, I haven't turned that on and I started to worry about battery leakage. And I suddenly thought, that this is a bit absurd. Now, a few years ago, we bought, and this is a rarity in itself, a working Simmons SDS6 sequencer. And they never really worked when they came out of the factory. And I really started to panic about the fact that this was working, and yet I haven't turned it on. I was actually walking one of our engineers through a couple of things on it in terms of functionality that I liked. And I suddenly started to panic about the battery on that. So I brought it home and opened it up, and then we were on, a whole nother ball game. Thankfully, it hadn't leaked, but I just thought, this is mad, and I started to feel guilty about all of the things that I hadn't turned on for a while. But there's also another thing that I just wanted to touch on, which ties in with both what Jamie and Ty were saying, is that you remember we talked about the touring years, and that I was fortunate enough to tour before the 91 recession, and then that decimated everything. What happened during that 91 recession, apart from me finding another focus, was that a lot of people, and this ties in with the kind of current state of world affairs, I think, and offers some glimmer of hope, is that a lot of people that I was working with who were affected by the same thing were doing exactly what Ty and Jamie were talking about, and that was they were immersing themselves in one particular sphere in order to take their mind away from the fact that they probably were unemployed at the time. But out of that came people who were the expert on this particular piece of gear. In my case, it was Creator, which then became Notator, which then obviously became Logic. And then when the kind of fog clears, because you've got an output that surrounds this particular gear that you have immersed your time in, and you have spent so much time learning and studying, you become known as, geez, he's the guy who got that out of that. And when the work opportunities start again, you get the call. Are you the guy who did that with that? Oh, yeah, well, I've never heard it done with that again. Is there any chance we can get together and kind of jam around for a bit? And I think that's really important now, actually. I'd only kind of tied that in with listening to Ty and Jamie. So, yeah, there's a certain amount of me that's learning things that I haven't had the time to invest time in. So, yeah. So at the minute, I'm not buying any gear. However, you did play me that Korg thing earlier, and I was like, dude, it's 99 quid.
The NTS one, yeah. I think that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Jamie, you've come and gone again. You're back, I think. Are you back?
Yeah. Is that acceptable? I'm on the phone now.
It's absolutely acceptable. You've changed venue.
For some reason, the internet took a shit. I've thought of that. I thought, wouldn't we be in deep?
Yeah, well, there is that. That's the thing. That's the other thing that we've got that people didn't have. Actually, this other piece of news just came in. I don't know if anybody saw this kind of because you mentioned Logic there, Dave. That there's on CDM Music. Did Apple just leak a new version of Logic with Ableton Clip style launching, which would be a very interesting concept there. So this is I don't know. I don't know anything about this, but it seems to have shown up, and it's sort of moving around the interwebs. I mean, that would be quite a radical shift in terms of the way Logic works as a thing. I wonder if that's something that they would be thinking of doing. It's an interesting move. Does anybody know any more about this? I mean, obviously there are NDAs and things in effect. Perhaps somebody who isn't under any sort of Apple NDA, Dave, so you probably can't talk, even if you knew you couldn't talk. Anybody? Are you a Logic guy, Jamie? I didn't know whether you are.
No, I mean, I started out Cubase and then went on to Logic many years ago, like version 4 or something, the purple one. But yeah, haven't used it for a while. I mean, it's great. It's fantastic. Whenever I do look at it, I'm like, yep, if you started out with this, you'd be rocking. And looking at people like Jacob Collier, the real masters of it, it's incredible what you can do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I used Logic for years. I mean, all of my production work was done in Logic, and now I haven't got a working copy. It's bizarre, and I just don't use it anymore because I'm not doing that stuff. But I sometimes think, oh, crikey, I've got a box here. I've got ones, but I haven't got a version that will run on my current OS, and I can't download the latest one because I'd have to go to Catalina, and there's no way I want to do that right now in a situation where this is all critical. That would be another piece of advice. If you're confined and you can't fix stuff, do not update to an OS that might break everything, because you really do not want that to be happening right now. As Jamie being an example, his laptop went to Catalina and his webcam stopped conversing with our system. It does work because Gaz got it to work, but those are the sort of things that you just got to bear in mind. In some ways there's a more mission critical, or if you've got it, do it on a computer that you can kind of go back in time and go, this is how it used to be. That might be a smart move.
Yeah.
Wise words, perhaps.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think I don't. Ty, you're not you're a Cubase and Nuendo user, aren't you? So
I jumped from Logic when I only kept going with Logic just because every now and again, if I was working with other people, they would have a lot of people had Logic, and so I kept up to date with it. I really never really got on that well with Logic, and when it got to 10, I was working on a session, and I remember just sitting here working on it, getting so frustrated just because it was Logic. And in the end, I just turned the session off and just rang them and just went, I'm not doing it. That's it. And literally got rid of everything, deleted everything. I don't want to know. I have nothing to do with Logic whatsoever.
That's interesting.
I'm basically just Nuendo and Cubase and some Live if I have to. Same with Pro Tools. I'm not a Pro Tools fan particularly. So, it's...
yeah, well, you got to work...
But look... At the end of the day, they're all tools. I've said this so many times. They're all tools. If it works for you, that's fantastic. It's, kind of everyone's headspace. The same way that Jamie was saying, all of this kind of stuff. It's also incredibly personal that you should do whatever works for you and ignore what anyone says. Me, you, Dave, Jamie, anybody. If it works for you, nobody should tell you it's wrong. I've got a friend who, every now and again, he'll message me just going, I've just seen this online and so says that you should do this through this kind of bus and all this kind of thing. And I'm doing it this way. And my first answer all the time is, okay, what does it sound like? Are you happy with how it sounds? Well, yeah, it's sounding great, but in which case, ignore everything else. If it works for you, that's all that matters. Don't have anyone tell you what you should do, how you should do it, how it should work.
Unless you're looking for it, yeah. Unless you're looking to change it, yeah.
If you're looking for it, that's fine. But don't presume that just because someone else does it differently or whatever, that's the way it should be done. There's no should be done. We're all bluffing. We're all learning. And that's the way it should be. We should all be learning every day. God, this sounds like I'm preaching now, but we should all be learning every day. If you're not learning,
we have to draw the line somewhere. We have to draw the line at cannibalism.
Oh, yeah.
There's no right way to do cannibalism, all right? And I'm saying that now.
Well, there is. Of course there is.
It's interesting. No, but that's really interesting because, Jamie, we talked a lot about this when we did that sort of special on the UA stuff about this, because all of those old school recording environments of the big studios where the talent would walk in and there would be the equivalent of the BBC engineer who was, this is the way that it's all done, the strings always go over here. There are these systems that are in place to make it easier, so you don't have to invent the wheel every time. Because that's the thing that I had when I was remixing. In the end, it was just sort of like, well, every remix? Do I really? Part of the reason that I'm being hired for a remix is because people like the sound or the approach we take. If I feel that I've got to reinvent it every time to keep myself interested, I'm sort of making it much harder for me and much harder for the client to accept my work. So
true. You've got to have a style. I always used to think, I worked a lot with Christian Vogel back in the early 2000s. He always said he was so productive because he kind of stuck to his aesthetic. And that gave him a recognizable sound, which was his signature, really. And if he removed that sound palette and that signature, then it could have been anyone, really. So, yeah, there's definitely an advantage to kind of getting a signature sound. In fact, that's really, wise. Look at someone like Tame Impala, Unknown Mortal Orchestra. They all have a really defined sound. It doesn't really make sense if you're doing sort of film and TV work where you've kind of got to be a jack of all trades in a way and be able to deliver action sequence and then dreamy, weird, wobbly thing. And then in that regard, it might pay to know all of the historical recording techniques and be able to mix and match, more in the Jack Antonoff way where you take kind of retro equipment and sort of, hint at modernity. But sort of, I think depends on your character trait. So I really like the idea of knowing the historical methods. At this point, guess I'm older, and just sort of going, oh, that's how they got that sound. Oh, cool. Can you get it any other way? And once you know how they got the original sound, then you might be able to sort of bastardize it and sort of turn it into something new. That can be interesting. I think it's because everyone's looking for something new. Really, I think a lot of the time something new comes from, taking something old and then flipping it. And sort of seeing if there's a way in. Or
thinking, I bet this is how I think they did it, and you do it a different way, which sounds slightly different. Ty, you wanted to come in there, Ty.
That's
was only
funny.
the fact
Ignorant stuff.
It was only the fact when it came to the TV and what Jamie was saying about, you know, being a jack of all trades. I went exactly the opposite route. And anyone that knows anything that I do for TV and film, you can spot me off, you know, spot my stuff a mile off. Only the fact that I made a decision fairly early on to use that voice. I found, you know, when everyone tries to find their voice, I was incredibly lucky. I found it really early on, and I kind of stuck to it. And then when it came to that, you know, it ended up, I had a break back in whenever it was, in 2000 or 2001 or something. And it was because I was just adamant that this is my sound, this was my voice. And the break came because all of a sudden that voice, that sound fitted in with where the world was at that moment. And literally the phone wouldn't stop ringing, and everyone wanted that sound and that voice, and I've kind of stuck to it. And you know, I mean, I've been offered stuff in the past that I've turned down for the simple reason that I wouldn't be able to carry on with that sound and that voice. And for me, it's more important that people do know that it's something that I've done, rather than just get the work. And so I'm not bothered about getting the work. I'm adamant that this is my sound, this is what I do, and you know, it served me incredibly well. But you're right. I mean, a lot of TV composers do take on that kind of, you know, a job's a job, and you know, they can go and write a rom-com, and then the next minute they go and, you know, kind of write an action movie. Whereas for me, I would be the first to, if someone ever came to me with a rom-com, they wouldn't even get past the first sentence, and I'd be saying, no, I'm not the man for you.
It's not your thing.
What I do.
It's not what I do. I mean, just moving back to where we are now. I mean, the thing is, right now, where we are as society, and all this confinement, and the time that we've got to maybe introspectively focus on our creative techniques and our own voices, this is the perfect time to develop that and to hone it, because you've got the time. You know, okay, things might be crummy because you're not getting any work. You have maybe money's tight and what have you, but you can invest in your own creative voice and your own creative kind of nurture that those skills, which will hopefully at the end of it give you more confidence and more ability to do something unique, or do something that's kind of almost built, because there is a sense of working in isolation helps you create your own voice, because if you're doing it to people all the time to kind of please them, then you're maybe sort of not following your own path so much. I mean, this is COD psychology, obviously, but I mean, just as a concept. So I think in many ways, you know, this opportunity is great. Sorry, who was that?
No, that's me. You're absolutely right, because at the end of the day, the very nature of doing TV and film stuff is you have to please people. You have to please the director or the producer or whoever you're working with, that, you know, kind of they're happy with the product. And so therefore, for me, it's more so important that if I've got to please other people rather than pleasing myself, which no one really wants to do at the end of the day, everyone wants to do what they want to do. So it's more important that at least if I'm going to be sat here for days and weeks working on something, it's got to be something that genuinely feels like I'm sounding like me. I'm doing what I want to do. It's just the end product has to be approved. That's all. Whereas the thought of doing that, of it having to be approved, but then doing something that I'm not enjoying doing, well, I might as well go and work in a chip shop. I'm not. You know, I've got to feel that sense of at least I'm doing what I want to do.
Yeah.
You know, but you're absolutely right about people using this time and opportunity to develop their own voices. And because at the end of the day, if you're going to have any time to just experiment and try stuff out, this is the time. This is the time. And that's the only way you find your own voice. The only way you find your own voice is to sit and try and do stuff that you're never going to let anyone else in the world hear, because, you know, that's how you find your own voice. I mean, in terms of creatives, financially, in terms of creative, this is an awful time for people. But from a creative point of view, this is an amazing time for people, in the same way that, you know, when we come out of all of this, the creatives will come out of this, you know, served well. And the only other two people at the end are going to be hairdressers and divorce lawyers, because they're going to be, at the end of this, they're going to be making a killing, those two.
Yeah,
but for creatives, you know, this is the time to do it. This is,
do
you know,
your thing. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think that's a really positive message.
There's something else that comes out of this. I know that Nick and I talked with you about it a while ago. In that, so Dale, who's been on the podcast, but was Amy Winehouse's MD and bass player and whatnot, is my oldest friend. Him and I have always had this discussion about what facilitates great art. And him and I, rightly or wrongly, agreed a million years ago that actually the more strife you encounter and the more oppression cultures encounter, the more great art is produced as a result of that. And he cited this, and he's entitled to do this because his family come from St. Lucia and stuff, that actually not a lot of great art perhaps comes from the Caribbean, where things are a lot more laid back. But more oppressive regimes, there's amazing art. Now, we are living through fairly oppressive times for artists and everybody else across the spectrum. So actually what I'm hoping, if our analogy is true, and there are times when I've doubted it, but there are times where I kind of think, this is the time where it's going to be interesting to see that actually in 6 months, a year, 9 months' time, we might start seeing some amazing art come out of this.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's absolutely a given. I would completely concur with that. Well, I think we seem to have got through an hour. And Jamie, I'm really digging your outside space there and the weather.
Oh, yeah.
That just looks absolutely bloody lovely.
Of,
I hope you're still on your own property and you're not out in the world too much.
This is next door. No. I just wanted to sort of like follow up on all of that great advice, and for some reason my mind went to, I don't know if it's true or not, but I think Rod Temperton used to write a lot of those hits like in his undies, just sort of like, you now have the opportunity to be in your undies, working out who you are in isolation.
I'm there now. I'm just
saying, like, if it was good enough for Rod Temperton, then it might work for us. So after this, I'm, I don't know.
Stripping
maybe
off.
I don't know. It's not really. I've never tried it. Maybe it's time. I've never really worked out just the power of undie writing.
No, I've never. There's a new genre, isn't there? We've got indie, undie, and something else. No doubt, yeah. Or maybe both. Maybe indie, undie, or undie, indie. Who knows? There's a whole new genre could be created. That might be a good show title, actually. Indie, undie, or undie, indie. We'll think about that.
That'll get my attention.
But thank you, everybody, for joining us and sharing your thoughts. We look forward to doing this again. And don't forget, if you want to find out about video streaming and stuff, I'm looking at the document now. There's a few of you people on there. It's bit.ly/remotevid, just one word, and that'll get you to this document. Because one thing that we did find today was if you use Zoom, which is a fantastic video conferencing, and you can plug in an additional webcam to the camera that you might have built into your device. So you actually can have two shots, and your screen. So that is a really powerful way. Certainly if you were going to do a video with us, absolutely brilliant way and easy without getting too complicated. Just need a local audio recording so that we can have a stereo master. But bit.ly/remotevid if you check that out, because we're going to do this event. But folks, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Jamie, also for the little tour around your
Oh, there you go. We're getting a fence made. There's a couple of things people can. Those characters can work in isolation, so they get on with their job. And it's good to see you guys. Thanks for your wise words of encouragement through these times. It's good stuff. Get to know yourself. Make some good shit.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Same to you, Ty Unwin. Thank you for joining us too. And may many more of them come. I hope you have let's have the weather's weather might speed up a bit. It's looking okay. The sunshine, you can sit in the garden, do whatever you need to. But Ty, thank you so much for joining us as well.
No problem whatsoever.
Pleasure.
Great as always.
And Mr. Dave Spears there, Survivors edition. Classic. Yeah. Is that the one that was...
remember this?
Yeah, I do.
Of course I do. Yeah.
Of course I do.
Dude,
you know what?
So obsessed by that in the 70s.
A school friend of mine's dad lived on the farm where that was filmed, Callow Farm in Monmouthshire, and I went there.
Wow.
I went there for an evening, and it was a weird place because there'd been some strange business going on in the English Civil War with wasn't very nice. And I remember I woke up in the middle of the night and they had one of those pictures whose eyes followed you around the room, and I never liked it there. But I do remember the series. Yeah. Right, folks, we'll say goodbye. Don't forget, if you want to join, enter the competition to win the Ozone 9, we'll just throw that up there, looking for the hashtag YourBestMix and the hashtag Ozone 9 to @SonicState and @Isotope Inc. And that's it for this week. Thank you, everybody. It's been a real pleasure, and may you all stay safe and well where you are, and we'll be back with you again. Don't you worry. Jamie, Dave,
bye-bye.
Ty, we'll see you all soon. Take care, folks. Bye-bye now. Bye.
Bye.